if you start evaluating the market and what's out there, especially with Tavares, and he's willing to take a deal that's well below his market value because he wants to stay in this market, he specifically would be someone you think about just third line centerman. He wins 60% of his faceoffs. Like, you're not counting on, I know Florida does, but generally speaking, you don't count on your third line center to get more than maybe 20 goals and maybe 45 points. He would obviously vastly outproduce that, and maybe even in the playoffs, he gets half a point a game, would vastly outproduce usual third line centerman. You got to adjust what we think he is to what he actually would be, which would be a depth contributor, which he probably would be pretty good at for a couple of years. Now, I don't want to give him 4 years or 5 years because he's not going to be as good 4 years, 5 years now. But if you can get it short, I think that's a conversation you got to have.
Well, I think the way you're saying that is the way I could see Brad Treliving saying it or seeing it, and I think why stop there?
Then you would accurate.
Well, and then you just continue with Marner because, ultimately what would end up happening, what has happened here the last 3 or 4 years, and I think in the end is what got Shanahan, is it wasn't an obsession to win. It was being terrified of losing. And if you're terrified of losing, you keep these guys.
That is very liberal use of language to suggest that Brendan Shanahan was not obsessed to win, and he was scared of losing.
Then why did they just keep bringing him back then?
Because
what's your explanation?
Because he believed differently than you. That's why, flat out. Now, he was wrong, but and that's fair to say. He was wrong to believe that this core with this group at this time would be good enough to do it. He was wrong. But to suggest he did it because he was, he's happy to be a 100-point team and not worried about getting a third round, that's not who these guys are. That's not who he is.
Really? Really, Johnny? We think everyone's uber obsessed and crazy? I don't. I mean, paint me cynical, really? But I'm not.
So you don't think that multiple-time Stanley Cup champion, Hall of Famer, who took this job in his hometown, was obsessed with trying to win?
I think he desperately wanted to win. I think he desperately wanted to win.
Okay, so what are you talking about?
I think he loved his job, too. I think a lot of people love their jobs. Sure. We say it all the time. Guys are always like, oh, just trade those picks. I'll be gone by the time. Guys think about their keeping the job. Guys do that happens sometimes. We cannot be, you cannot be that naive.
You can't be naive. No.
Yes, to think that, everyone in the league is just so upset, and I'm willing to gamble with my whole life and career to go for it, or I can take this route, and I have a great life for the next decade. Really? I don't think so, man. Yeah, I don't think that's... And I'm not saying that's 100% the case with Shanahan. And again, I think you're misinterpreting what I'm saying in a way. It's the idea that if Marner leaves and Tavares leaves, that's terrifying because they might get significantly worse and miss. And I don't know if I want to live in that world. But the opposite is I got to let them go because I got to try the other one.
Right.
Because I got to try to win. Right? I'm not saying it necessarily in the insulting manner in which maybe you're interpreting it, but I think that may happen this time. Because these guys are really good players, really good regular season players, and they'll make the playoffs. And
I think how I would phrase it would be, the comfort or confidence in knowing you're going to be good with a good chance versus the unknown of what your chance might look like if you make those changes.
Sure. And that's softer language.
What could be worse, though, than continuing to lose? I'll take the unknown every time after what's gone on. That's the way I look at it. It's how could it be worse? You're not going to miss the playoffs. Is that the nuclear option? Yes, but I don't know. I'll try something different as opposed to...
But I think as they continue to tinker over the last several years, and maybe where this summer is different, is that one, the contracts they were under, so they had to move off these guys was harder because they had no trade protections or whatever it might be. They didn't have the ease of movement that they have this summer, and they also maybe believed that the rest of the roster was more flawed than just these guys, and they thought they could somehow, with this group of high-paid players, they could fill out the rest, and they did. They did fill out the rest, but in the end, it wasn't enough, which is why I think it would be different this year, which is why I think Mitch Marner will very likely not be back here, and I think they might be okay with the fact he forced his hand. Now Hayes might be upset because they didn't force Mitch's hand, saying, "Listen, we're just not having you back," as opposed to trying to sign him in February and then being whatever happened there. But I think for the whole group, run it back. probably not ideal, and I don't think anyone wants that. But I think maybe for Tavares specifically, given the contract and everything else, that does seem more feasible. And I don't know if just bringing not Mitch back is enough of a culture change. I think it might be, though. Like, I do think it's pretty significant what he was in that room and what he was in this market. It would change the dynamic pretty significantly. Not because Mitch is a bad guy, I'm not saying that, but just because it's going to be really, really different. And you can get an $8 million player and a $5 million player for him that can be completely different kinds of players. You get Brad Marchand and Sam Bennett for that same 13.5 you're going to give Mitch. If you could, that would be enough with one of the two departing to make your team different.
Yeah, and you know what? This might be a moot point where Mitch Marner has made up his decision and is leaving. Like, regardless if you want to keep him or not, he has the right to walk on July 1st. And if they do get John Tavares on a value contract and Mitch walks, the team does look different. There's no core four anymore. It's the core two and John Tavares, who, like you mentioned, is on a value contract.
Matthew Knight is ahead of John Tavares in the second one.
Agreed. Right? And here's the other thing. This is what I think we might have to get away from. I think the crop of the unrestricted free agents is not as deep as we would want it.
No.
So that now you start getting creative and looking at trades. Jamie. Exactly. Like, I'm looking at, again, this is wish list, it's Nazem Kadri, but maybe it's Braden Shen. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe, you're calling Doug Armstrong and saying, what are you doing with your organization? You might be looking to get younger. Like, that's the type of stuff you get creative. Again, do you have the currency?
You need your own pick.
You need to offer.
I like that.
I agree. I think you need to be creative, but this is where, Johnny, and I'm going to put it back to you, this is where Brad Treliving, if he doesn't have Brendan Shanahan's vision, if they weren't aligned going into last season, now it's Brendan Shanahan's show. I'm sorry, it's Brad Treliving's show. And he can go, if he wanted to move off Mitch Marner last year, or if he wanted to get creative, but he couldn't do that because his hands were tied behind his back because you got to run it up the chain. If he has the keys to the kingdom, Brad Treliving will build the team that he wants. And he might have that flexibility just because Mitch Marner walks. And now you start to get creative, and that's where it'll be interesting to see what he does with all of that.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and talking about just for offer sheets, what was Dylan Holloway's contract? Is it like 2.8?
2.8.
That's like a second and a third. You go find a guy like that for your second and a third, you can do some things. So you're right, Noodles. If they weren't in complete alignment, and plus Tree was new enough that he's like, I guess, do I know enough about this group to decide definitively that it's not a good idea? But now he knows, and now it's going to happen regardless. So, that's. I think that's the road they go down. The only other thing, guys, I want to pull you guys. Oh, you're the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Mitch Marner's like, I'm not signing back, but I want to sign and trade